Hi, my name is David Wetton, and welcome to the Conscious Leadership Now podcast. The intent of this podcast is to encourage you as a leader to embrace conscious leadership by giving you access to some of the world's leaders in the field of conscious leadership, both in practice and in thought. My heartfelt wish is that you leave this podcast feeling inspired with ideas to take away and implement in your business or organization to make a real difference in our world. And my guest today is Johanna Lyman. Hi, Johanna.
Hi, David.
Hi. Now, Johanna is the founder and CEO of NextGen Orgs. She's helped thousands of people all over the world build the business of their dreams and step into being the leader they've been called to be. NextGen Orgs helps small companies whose teams can't keep up with their growth get to their next level of success through building a culture that supports sustainable profitability and develops their teams to their highest potential. Now, while NextGen custom designs every client project, universal needs that pop up repeatedly with clients are conscious communication, emotional intelligence, and purpose, all elements of conscious leadership for me. Johanna's work draws on insights from Conscious Capitalism. Indeed, Johanna is board president for the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of Conscious Capitalism. And one of the 4 tenets or pillars of conscious capitalism is conscious leadership, which is absolutely spot on for our conversation today. And in my view, Johanna is a conscious leader. She has an impossible mission to see world peace before she dies. Her desire through NextGen Orgs is to teach millions of people how to be great leaders, with the insight that when this happens, we will have peace on the planet. And I absolutely love this mission, Johanna.
Thank you. Although a friend of mine said I can't call it an impossible mission anymore because I have a plan.
I like that as well. A plan to believe it. So Johanna speaks widely on topics of conscious capitalism and brave cultures, where brave cultures are mission and purpose driven first and foremost. And I'm looking forward to a brave and inspiring interview here today. And I'll begin by saying it's a real privilege to welcome you to the show, Johanna.
Thank you so much, David. I'm thrilled to be here.
You're welcome. That's Take 5 by the Dave Brubeck Quartet, and it's my cue that it's time for you, Johanna, to have Take 5, your take on 5 conscious leadership questions. So my first question to you is, what does conscious leadership mean to you?
To me, conscious leadership starts with self-awareness. So self-awareness is one of the aspects of emotional intelligence. In fact, it's the first thing that you have to do if you want to build your emotional intelligence, is to become aware of what emotions you're actually feeling and why, and then be able to manage that. So that's the foundation of conscious leadership, is the ability to be self-aware and emotionally intelligent. Another important aspect of conscious leadership to me is to have, to be what I think of as otherish, which is the opposite of selfish. So to truly care about the people around you. So that's, I would say, the second piece of conscious leadership. And then to swipe from the playbook of Conscious Capitalism, they also talk about conscious leaders having a spiritual intelligence, not any particular religion, but basically having the belief in some higher consciousness. And then lastly, we talk about conscious leaders having systems intelligence. So we're able to use design thinking, we're able to think about the system in a very holistic way to bring out the best of what wants to emerge.
I love that, and I love the importance of the awareness. Actually, I think the sense that to me seems kind of pivotal when the leader has an awareness, because I think that's where things start from. I quite often say, if they can choose then to respond as opposed to react, that for me is one key element of awareness. And I love what you shared. I think from where it's coming from Conscious Capitalism, where, if I remember correctly, they speak about the leader moving from a me to a we perspective.
Yes.
And I think what you were saying in there, in my language, it resonates with that. They have this mission for the greater good of all. So there's as you said, and I like the aspect of bringing in spiritual intelligence as well, because obviously, no doubt listeners have heard quite a lot about emotional intelligence from Daniel Goleman, but not so much about spiritual intelligence. So I think that's nice to introduce that. And do you have an aspect of what that means, spiritual intelligence, for those that are listening?
Yeah, to me, it means having a belief or a faith in some sort of higher intelligence than us, and to actively build your connection to that higher intelligence. So whether it's through meditation or yoga, journaling, any of the things that help us become more self-aware will also help to build our spiritual intelligence.
That's wonderful, and we'll come on to that as a question later. But I think this idea of a spiritual practice, again, for me, I think ties into this self-awareness. So it's
Yes.
so important. Wonderful. So how do you express conscious leadership through your work?
I'd say first and foremost, I model it. So, and I always say that an organization can only be as conscious as the least conscious of its leaders. So the leaders have to go first. So how I model it in my own life is just by, checking my privilege, paying attention to my self-awareness, managing my own emotions, and just really walking the talk of what it means to be a conscious leader. I have a daily spiritual practice that keeps me grounded and honest. And then teaching others, I do a lot of executive coaching, and sometimes the folks I'm coaching have never heard of conscious leadership, but they learn. And, again, it starts with the emotional intelligence. So just helping them become better humans, which makes them better leaders.
Wonderful. And I've looked at your LinkedIn profile and seen some great testimonials on there. So really, I'm just curious, when you're doing your work, do you know what people would say about you, how you actually embody conscious leadership through your coaching, through your work with the corporates? What sort of comments have you had from people?
Let's see, the most memorable was that I embody fierce love. So I'm like a mother who loves her child, but won't let them get away with anything. Constantly holding them to the best version of themselves.
And I absolutely love that, and I think we might have touched on this before when we spoke earlier, that the fierce love for me has this aspect of both a masculine and a feminine trait, and I believe we all have both. But
Yes.
I really love that, because I think when I've been my mentor's been held in fierce love, there's a sense, as you said, you're not going to get away with anything, but you absolutely know that they're on your side.
Yes. Yep. And then I would say another sort of memorable piece of feedback that I've received is that I missed my calling as a voiceover specialist. Which is funny, because you can't hear yourself as others hear you. So
yes, that's right. Quite true. And one of the reasons why I asked the question, because when others reflect back, actually, we appreciated this about you. Quite often, because you might well take it for granted, sometimes those qualities you don't always see in yourself.
Right.
So thank you for that. So in your journey, and I think conscious leadership, and if you agree, for me is a journey.
Yes.
Whether you use it, the heroes or heroines journey, or whatever you want to do. And I think as part of this journey, for me anyway, when I'm talking personally, lean on people that have come before and resources. So who for you in your journey has been an exemplar of conscious leadership, and why?
A few people come to mind. First is Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce. He is just such a good human. And I don't know I don't know him personally, but I don't know if people know this, but the mission of Salesforce is actually to see, or what I would say their vision is to see a carbon neutral planet. Even though they've got this software that does HR stuff, but their why behind it is to have a carbon neutral planet. And so he's one. I would say Simon Sinek
Yes.
is another. And actually, I'm going to say 4.
Is that through his obviously famous TED Talk now? Looking at the why.
Yes. Yep. Start with Why is the TED Talk that sort of launched him. But he has his most recent book out is called The Infinite Game. And I love this so much because it really is conscious capitalism. It's the opposite of what we have now, which we call crony capitalism, where it's an extractive winner takes all model. This is the impossible game, as he says, is a game that goes on forever, or the infinite game, excuse me, not impossible game. The infinite game goes on forever. The players can come in and out. They play for as long as they want to play, and it's a win-win for everybody. There are no losers. Dr. Brene Brown, who is famous for a TED Talk on vulnerability and shame, 2 TED Talks actually. Her latest book, Dare to Lead, which is 2 or 3 years old now, is fantastic. And then sort of a local fan here in the Bay Area is Diana Chapman, who is the co-author of a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leaders. And so she talks in her book, they talk about, are you above the line or below the line? And when you're above the line, you're responding. When you're below the line, you're reacting.
Yes, I've got that book, and it's a fabulous resource actually to have a look at and dive into. So I would recommend that. And I do believe, well, I know I've read, and I can't remember the title of it. I know that Mark Benioff has also written a book as well, which I've read, and that is well worth having a look at. And I know, and if I remember correctly, I think in the current pandemic crisis, I think he's been quite instrumental in getting some resources together to support local community. So you're right, I think he's a conscious leader who is very keen on showing up and walking his talk, even though it may not be the correct decision in the moment for profitability. I think he really has a heart for knowing he takes decisions for the longer term. So in that case, he has a brave, in your language, he has a brave culture, I believe.
Yeah, very much so. And he's one of the 0.1% of billionaires who actually donates to causes like homelessness. He's deeply committed to solving that problem in the Bay Area.
So I think all of those actually you've mentioned to my way of thinking and feeling kind of have a heart for business, in the sense of we want a sustainable business and we want to serve our customers and our stakeholders well, but the sense of actually, as you've said before, there's something larger at stake here that we actually literally put a stake in the ground for.
Yes.
So there is, isn't there? I think for a conscious leader, there is this, as you kind of said, there's a fierce love in the way they show up and the way they sort of present to their team as well.
Yes.
So thank you for that. And we have touched on some, but the sort of the part B of this question is, what resources have you found helpful on your conscious leadership journey?
Oh, so many. Let's see. In addition to the ones I've already mentioned, my spiritual practice has been a tremendous resource to me. Also, another book, which is right in front of my face right now, the Conscious Capitalism Field Guide, which came out in 2017, which really brought the conscious capitalism movement, which started with the book by the same name in 2013, 2014, I think, was very theoretical and some case studies, but light on the how do we do this if we want to do it. Yeah. So the field guide came out with its, packed with practical things you can do to move the needle toward becoming a more conscious business. Let's see. And then just working with, I'm a very, very collaborative leader. So, doing things with some of the board members and other consultants that I know and work with and really respect. So it's been a very, less of a book and intellectual learning and more a felt journey for me.
Beautiful, beautiful. And whilst we're on the journey, and I know the probably listeners will be shouting at me to say, ask this question, David. So the question I wanted to ask is, as Bay Area president of the Conscious Capitalism chapter, and I think from memory there's about 26 chapters at the moment through the USA, and there's chapters internationally as well. So my question on resources is, for a leader listening to this or watching this podcast, what would they get out of joining one of these chapters?
Well, all the chapters operate fairly independently, so I can only speak from our Bay Area chapter.
Yeah.
And we have a number of different levels of membership, from individual to champion. So from $120 a year to $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
And they get what they get varies based on the level of membership. But at some of the corporate levels, they get things like individual trainings. So board members will come to your company and offer a free training for you. They get access to a community of like-minded leaders throughout the Bay Area. We are, we're all virtual now in this current pandemic, but we have lots of plans for building out resources for leaders to do, quarterly workshops on the 4 tenets, and CEO events that are just for CEOs of companies to come together and learn from each other and learn from, a speaker somewhere. So those will be quarterly events when we resume our ability to meet in person. But for now, we've decided to be unreasonably generous. And we do once or twice a month, we have an online event that we used to charge a small amount, like $10 for non-members, free for members. And we've decided to make those free for everybody. We have one, it's May, so we've got one on the 12th and one on the 27th. And we're also focused very much in the Bay Area on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we have such a diverse group of stakeholders here in the Bay Area, and we really have not historically done a great job of outreach to and service to all of our stakeholders. So we've got a commitment to improve how we're doing there. So about every 2 or 3 months, we do an education on some aspect of DEI. So in May, it's going to be on unconscious bias, and there's a certain technology that helps people to reduce their unconscious bias. So we're going to be learning about that.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your work on this. And actually, I hear you say that each chapter is differently, but I just have a sense that those who are interested, what a great resource to at least go and connect with and find your local chapter and see how they can help you. Because as you said, one of the 4 tenets is, in fact, conscious leadership, isn't it?
Yes.
So, so there's an in there. And I think actually working with fellow people, leaders who are on a similar sort of journey, perhaps it could be at different stages, I just find that so powerful as well, I think. And you spoke earlier about being collaborative, so I can absolutely see why you're involved as a board president, because, I'm guessing it's something you're very passionate about.
Yes, very much.
And for me, when I've touched into the conscious capitalism, is really about inspiring positive transformation and change. Yes. And how can you not get excited as a leader, in doing this, and looking at bringing out the best in everyone and looking at the stakeholders. I just think it's so needed at this moment in time. So, so thank you.
Sure. Actually, the tagline for the book, Conscious Capitalism, is "Unlock the Heroic Spirit of Business," which I love so much. It's how Adam Smith envisioned capitalism when he came up with it, and it just rather immediately became completely corrupted. But I think this is one of the opportunities we have now in this pandemic time, is that we are starting to really see how broken the system is.
Yeah.
And we've got the solution right at hand.
We have, yes. And isn't that, I actually can, in my language, I consider it a privilege then to be involved in this sort of work. And I know for those listening, I won't be able to see you, but I can see the passion within you when you start talking about this. And I think, isn't that great? Because I think to take that into an organization to, I can just sense, for you to ignite them and actually to get in touch with their own passion and their own wisdom. And I think, I don't know if you agree, I think something about this is actually, and I'll be a little bit rude if you like, I think sometimes the old consultancy paradigm can be actually, we're coming in and we'll give you the answers, you just need to follow this routine. For me, and I'll ask you in a second, for me, this is about actually going in, holding a space, okay, bringing some tools and how to do it, but it's about actually letting them get in touch with their own inner wisdom and expressing that for themselves in the workplace. So I don't know how you think and feel about that.
Yeah, very much so. We're actually in the process of a rebranding, and with an extraordinary organization called Motto. The co-founders wrote a book called Rare Breeds, which I highly recommend. And so we were just yesterday in a workshop with them talking about the things that are true about consulting and the things that are false about consulting. And one of our one of the top falsehoods is that there's we have one size fits all. And what's really true is that every organization, every individual is unique. And we actually believe that the leader's job is to tune in using that emotional and spiritual intelligence to what wants to happen in the business, and to almost act as a midwife to birth what wants to emerge.
Isn't that beautiful? And I think I've seen on your own website where you have been influenced by the work, I think it was of Frederick Laloux, and reinventing organizations.
Yes.
And he talks about emergence, doesn't he? So I think that's a sense of almost what's asking to be birthed here in this organization in a way that it produces a product, I think, or a service that actually makes a real difference. And of course, profitability as well is profitable.
Right. Yeah, when I read that book, I thought, this man is inside my brain.
Yes. That's another book, and I'll put it down in the resources below. It is an excellent resource in this area. Now, next question we've already touched on a little bit earlier because you mentioned it. And research by Professor Jodie Fry suggests that inner life is the source of conscious leadership, where inner life is a form of spiritual or contemplative practice. It might be just a stillness practice, so it could include walking in nature, it might be meditation, etc. So I'm just really curious, what practices have you found helpful in your conscious leadership journey, and why?
Yeah, so I have a meditation practice. I'm terrible at it, but I'm sticking to it and have since 2007, I believe. I also have a spiritual reading that I do on a daily basis. And that has been profoundly impactful. I go in and out of my asana practice with yoga. But really, I would say the most impactful thing has been this book that I've been reading for 4.5 years now, called The Way of Mastery.
Right.
And I just read a little, 2 to 4 pages every morning and sit with, just kind of let it sink in and sit with what I've just read. And it's had just such a profound impact on me.
And who's the author of that book?
It is published by the Shanti Christos Foundation, and it's a channeled work of channeled Jesus.
All right. Okay.
And although it is not, it's not religious at all in nature. In fact, he has channeled some things that I think would raise the hair of Christians. But it's just a beautiful book.
Isn't that beautiful? And I think from holding a few interviews, my sense is actually it's finding something a stillness or spiritual practice that actually resonates with you first and foremost.
Yes.
And for me, actually, one of my observations from my own practice is sometimes you can do meditation. You said you can do reading, whatever that practice is. I like walking meditation, but quite often that moment can still me, can bring me present. But actually, it may well be later that morning or even the afternoon when I'm doing something quietly that suddenly some insight can come in, and I have a sense that spiritual practice almost enables it. It's almost like at times a slow burn that actually insights will then appear during the day.
Yeah, they bubble up. I
Yeah.
also have a journaling practice. I've been journaling since I was 13 years old.
Wow. Wonderful.
Um, and the last thing I would say is that nature.
Mm.
So my partner and I love to go
Mm.
glamping, and just being in the redwoods or being by the
Mm.
ocean is just so grounding and peace inducing to me.
I,
We're missing it quite a lot
I bet
with
you
this
are.
shelter in place.
And knowing the Bay Area quite well, I absolutely agree with you. And for me, when I go into what I call big nature, so it could be by the sea, it could be the big hills, the big mountains, there's something, and difficult to put into words. It just takes me there into a contemplative state, a state of actually just being. Sometimes it's blissful, but there's something about just being present, and I do lose sense of time. But it's a deeply nurturing place for me to be.
Yes, me too.
So thank you for that. Now, finally, my final question is actually, given unlimited time and resources, what single thing would you recommend aspiring conscious leaders to do?
Do the work you need to do to become emotionally intelligent. 95% of us think we're emotionally intelligent, but research has shown that only 10 to 15% of us actually are.
Yes,
So
and
if you're saying, "Oh, I'm emotionally intelligent, I've got that," no, you don't.
mm, mm. I actually, and I couldn't agree more. And I can't remember who it was. I was listening to some spiritual teacher the other day saying, if someone says they are emotionally intelligent, they probably aren't, because they haven't. It's an ongoing piece of work. So,
Right. And same
it's
with enlightened.
yes, agreed. Well, thank you for that. And as you know, listeners know, I love Columbo. So I always have a just one more thing question.
Sure.
So, Johanna, opportunity actually, please, to share your own resources and your own commercial offerings, which you feel would be helpful to those listening to this podcast.
Sure. So a free resource would be go to ccbayarea.org and click on the resources page, and you'll see um, all of our online events have been recorded and live up. Well, most of them have been recorded and they live up there, so you can check them out. And then my own website is nextgenorgs.com. I have a quiz there on the homepage. You can see how brave your culture is. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Johanna Lyman. And I'd like to offer a complimentary 30-minute strategy session, if folks want to learn more about becoming a conscious leader or how to have a brave culture in your own company. I'd be happy to connect.
Oh, that's wonderful, and thank you. And I'll put those links below the podcast here, so that
I
people
think I
can
gave
see
you
them.
my time trade to schedule, right?
Yes, I have.
That
Yes,
link.
I've got
Okay.
that. So I'll put that down so people are able to contact you. So thank you so much. So, Johanna, thank you so much for being on the show, and really for showing up in the world of conscious leadership in the way that you do.
Yeah. Thank you, David. This was really fun.
Thank you. And I just want to say, actually, if you've enjoyed this podcast and my approach to conscious leadership, then please know that I help aspiring conscious leaders develop purpose-led, high-performing leadership teams through one-to-one coaching and tailored leadership programs. If you sense I can help you, then please look me up, David Wetton, on LinkedIn, and let's jump onto a conversation together. And finally, I want to thank you, all the listeners to this podcast. If you're willing, do please share a link to this podcast with those you think would truly benefit from it. As I truly believe that now is the time for conscious leadership, and with all the inspiring, heartfelt work that you as listeners are doing, I have no doubt that conscious leadership will become a thriving reality, making a difference for the greater good of all. So until next time, I'll leave you with a blessing from John O'Donoghue. May the light of your soul bless the work you do, with the secret love and warmth of your heart. And so it is.
And so it is.